Are they? Good.
Yeah.
Does the sound come out all right?
Yeah, sound is good,
Can you hear what
yeah.
I'm saying?
You can hear people in the background and they'll quite fun.
Yeah, good. Right, okay, so I think last week 1 or 2 people were using acrylics, so I thought I'd do a little bit of an acrylics demonstration. And then next week, for 4 weeks, I'm going to move on to watercolours, for those of you that fancy trying watercolours. But nothing is compulsory, you can do whatever mediums you like. But this is my way of just covering all the different mediums, and then you can pick and choose what you'd like to do from there. So with the watercolours, next week, it will be a very basic watercolour course. I'm looking to try and come up with lots of very quick exercises. I'll have, if you need watercolour paper, I've got some for sale, I'll bring that in next week. Or if you haven't got watercolours and you want to borrow watercolours, that's fine, I've got those to lend out. But if you prefer to stick to acrylics, the oils, whatever else, that's absolutely fine. Okay. So with acrylics, I don't know if you can be able to see, the way I tend to go about painting acrylics, so this is just a bit of board that I've painted a blue background on. I thought I'll just do a little bit of the tree, and maybe do a little bit of it. I'm kind of going to ignore the background, but you could, ideally if you're going to paint this, you perhaps, maybe I'll use a bit of background. So, I quite like to use a pastel pencil with acrylics, and I try and pick a colour, I don't know if you can see that, but I try and pick a colour that I can just about see, so it's not too intrusive. And I pick something that would mix in. So this will very easily wipe out. I can kind of move this around. That's the reason I like to use pastel, is because it's very easy to alter the drawing. If it goes wrong, I can rub it out with my hands or just wash it out with a little bit of water. And because the acrylics, sometimes they dry so quickly that you can't disrupt it. So I quite like to use this. So something like that. And if I did put cows in, they could go in there somewhere. This was a photo of Hadley, so this is like the fields beyond. And then generally I paint from the background to the foreground. So I won't paint everything, but I'll perhaps do a little bit of background, a little bit of tree, a little bit of foreground, see how it goes. So let's try that. So maybe some of this field colour, perhaps I'll go for this colour, this lightish colour. So these are all acrylics. I tend to just keep them in this box because it saves me squeezing out tubes of acrylic every time I do a demo. And I maybe thin them a tiny bit, but I don't thin them a lot. So just a tiny bit of water on my brush just to get the paint to flow. But equally, you could just use them neat. You could use them straight out the tube. Some artists actually use them more like watercolour on paper, which I don't tend to do. I tend to use them a bit more like oil paints, really. So that can be this almost like dark shaped field here. I think it's getting a little bit absorbed into the board. Make that a bit lighter. And just do a little bit of the pinky browny field there. So just adding a little bit of brown and a tiny bit of red if we've got some. Let's make that colour. So I would sort of carry on like that, just get all the background in, make that a little bit higher. Leaving space for the tree. I made it a little bit wide actually, but I'm not going to water that. And I carry on sort of working forward, so I'll get these greens in here. But I won't do that now, I'll just move on to the tree next. Just bring that brush out. I tend to, wash the brush. If I wash the brush, I then just dry it on a bit of rag or a bit of, we've got tissue here if anyone needs it, and there's water pots just over there. I don't like to have the brushes really, really wet. Then with the greens, I tend to go with the darker greens first, and then I'll work my way through the mid-tones and then the lighter greens. So I've got some, I'll mix a green with blue and yellow. So just going for the darks to start with. And maybe just a little bit of brown as well, just to warm that up a little bit. So the very dark areas, like here, that's there. So it's a reasonable size brush. You could wait for the background to dry. And then just kind of work those in there. On the side and do a bit on the side. I tend to work a little bit of the foliage before I start putting the tree trunk in. But if you prefer to just get some of the tree trunk in first, that'd be fine. That was sort of coming in that way. And although it's quite a big brush, I can perhaps use it on its side and make some marks like that. Or I can use it on its tip and just get some smaller marks like that. You particularly notice some of the leaf shapes on the edge. In the middle, it's more like a broad mass. And with trees, I try and look for sort of like, almost like waves of dark and light going through the tree. So it might be that we've got some sort of darker waves coming through there. Like this. And then go a little bit lighter, so the lightness to mix up a little bit. So this could be the mid-tone. Again, just really blue and yellow. And that, I think, is a little bit lighter. A little bit lighter still. Lighter bits down here. What I do try and do is kind of alternate the brush mark so that I'm not just doing one brush mark that I repeat. So maybe brush them that way, or that way, or that way. Just kind of trying to keep the brush marks looking lively. And then for the highlights, it might be get that. I might be able to, yeah, it's gone a little bit light, so that's something better. Put a few of those in, then I'll go lighter still. So I'll mix some of the whitish mix I had in here. So it's just a matter of looking where the light's bouncing off the light leaves. That. Yeah. But it's really important to get the darks first, otherwise you'll never get the light showing up light. Something along those lines. And then basically work my way forwards. Probably get this background in first, and then this bit work later on. Really nice formation goose just going through. Just getting distracted on the page. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Does anybody want to ask anything about that?
So if you were doing the background, like behind, would you do the background behind the tree first? Or would you put the background that you can see through the tree in after?
You could kind of, because it's acrylics, you could do either way really.
Yeah.
Because this will dry quite quickly, you could just paint the background and then paint the tree on top. And we have got a hairdryer there, so if you want to speed up the drying, you can do that. I tend to, I think because I'm used to painting with oils, I tend to roughly draw the shape out.
Yeah.
Basically, this is kind of how I paint with oil paints. If I was painting outdoors and just painting one session, I couldn't really put too much wet paint down and then put something on the top unless it dries. So,
Yeah.
but you could do it either way. Yeah. I suppose what might be best if I was going to do it like I'm doing this, it'd be good if I put the background in here and here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to have to go back in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you could, but equally you could paint the whole
Yeah.
background in and paint the tree on the top if you wanted. Yeah.